Now that we've created a test that could add lists based on basically a parameter that we're sending into a test case, now we can create another test case that drives this test case and feeds it with data. And what this will allows us to do is basically create these small atomic test case units that will be very, very reusable and that you can use for many, many different purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just cleaning up the list. So we have the original list, and then I'm going to create a new test. The new test is going to be called, let's call it add items to list loop. Because what we're going to do is we're going to loop over a set of data. Then under test data, I will add a CSV file. And the reason why we can use many different kinds of data, there's a lot of different data support in Busang. But what we want to do is we want to feed this, what that takes, this test case is actually a JSON object because it has like a name and a value. So what we're going to do is if you loop over a CSV, every line of the CSV actually represents a JSON object. So basically what we want to do here is we're just going to call this items, for instance, right? And then we got to make sure that this heading here corresponds to the variable name that we're feeding down into the test case. So I'm just going to save this, and then I'm going to go back using this drop down to see what was the name of that parameter. And as you can see, the default is add new item. So I'm just going to copy this and basically go straight back to where I were. So by doing this here, I'll just put the heading, add new item, and I will call this, let's say, wash the car. If I spell it correctly, it's better. Wash the car, buy groceries, and eat more vegetables. Awesome, right? So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, let's loop over these rows. Of course, you could have many, many columns here and building more sophisticated data and building basically a bigger JSON object. But here we only have one item, so it's only one column. And when we do this, we'll go into record. We'll basically just say, hey, make sure to loop over these items. So it's basically, you can set the index, start and end. But what we're just saying is loop over these items. And then we're just going to plug in the other test case, which means call the other test case. We'll add items to list. And then in the parameter section, we use the reserved keyword loop, which basically means one of the rows that we're feeding in there. So let's see how this is working now. So if I play this, ideally we're going to call the test case 3 times and feed the parameter into the test case, and hopefully this will work as intended. So let's try this. Well, as you can see, I was running add items to list loop and it just ran the test case one type with the wash the car. So I'm going to try again and see what happens. The reason why it did that, by the way, was that I highlighted the first action and it only ran that action. You need to make sure to highlight the start line of the test case. As you can see, it's adding everything appropriately, which is great. But what you can see is also it keeps reloading the page. So when it reloads the page, it deletes the items because there is no memory in this set. So we're gonna just figure that out. And the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna tell this one to never reload. And then we're gonna save this and we're gonna go into the sorted list and also make sure that this one never reloads. So just select never reload on the test cases and let's go back again and see if it works. Well, as you can see here, we've created a Very simple test case that has a master test case that feeds data into another test case and allows you to dynamically add data. So this is a very good starting point, for instance, if you want to provision a system with data, create a number of projects, and by building up test cases like this atomically, then now you can start creating very, very sophisticated test cases that can do a lot of cool stuff. But we're going to see that later in this exercise. But this is a good foundation to understand data-driven testing with Busan.